That's what stopped me cold. He thought no one was looking, but I was. 2 drops of clear liquid from a tiny glass vial. No label. He flicked it into the bottle like he'd done it before. Then he set it down, wiped his hand on a napkin, and turned back to the crowd with that politician smile of his, the one that only worked on people who didn't know better. I felt my chest tighten. My jaw locked up so hard it hurt. My name's Adam Bramwell. I'm 24, just graduated from UIC with a degree in environmental engineering. That night was supposed to be a celebration. Rooftop venue downtown, skyline view, flowers, a jazz band. My parents never supported my career, but here they were throwing me the biggest party they'd ever paid for. Before listening, share in the comments which city or country you're watching from, and let's continue. The whole thing felt off the second I arrived. Guests I didn't know, photographers, investors. Not a single classmate besides my 2 best friends, Jesse and Mateo. It looked more like a launch party for a new drug than a graduation. But I kept my mouth shut, played the grateful son. Then I saw what I saw. He poured the spiked champagne into 1 flute. Just one. Set it apart on a tray and whispered something to the waiter. My heart was beating so loud I thought it might give me away. I walked over, acting cool. He didn't flinch. Handed me the glass like nothing happened. "To new beginnings," he said. I took it, smiled, nodded. But I didn't drink. Instead, I turned around, scanned the room, found Nate, my older brother, golden boy, MBA, future CEO, family lapdog. I walked straight to him and said, "Congrats, man. You crushed it this year." He grinned. "Thanks, little bro. But tonight's about you." I held up the glass. "Then drink with me." He took it. No hesitation. "To family," I said. We clinked and he downed it in one go. I stood there holding my breath, forcing my face to stay still while my stomach twisted into a knot. My father was watching. Our eyes locked. He blinked once, slow, then turned away like he hadn't just watched his plan go sideways. I didn't know what was coming next, but I knew this. The game had started, and for once, I wasn't the one playing defense. I held my ground, staring at my father across the crowded rooftop. He turned his back, slipping into a circle of investors, laughing like nothing happened. Nate was chatting up a group of Ivy League friends, his glass already empty. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, but inside my head, it all snapped into focus. This wasn't just a bad night. This was the story of my whole damn life. Leonard Bramwell, my father, built an empire on pills and patents. He was a name that popped up on Forbes lists, spoke on CNBC, and got invited to fancy galas in New York. In public, he was visionary. Behind closed doors, he was a tyrant. He crushed whistleblowers, bribed regulators, sued anyone who got in his way. The man never heard no without turning it into a blood sport. And my mom, Veronica, born into money so old you could smell the dust on it. Her whole life revolved around image. The photo shoots, the charity luncheons, the fake smiles plastered on society pages. If something couldn't be spun into PR gold, it didn't matter. A kid graduating college in a field she didn't respect, that was garbage to her. But a rooftop gala with press coverage? That was worth the price tag. Then there was Nate, their perfect son. He had the look, the manners, the credentials. Harvard MBA, polished, charming. He knew how to wear the family name like a crown. They lined his path with gold bricks and he sprinted down it, no questions asked. He was the heir, the chosen one. I was the spare. It wasn't that I didn't try. Hell, I tried harder than anyone. But when I talked about environmental remediation, cleaning up rivers, restoring contaminated soil, holding corporations accountable, they called me weak, naive, ungrateful. My dad once laughed in my face and said, "Why would you waste your life fixing problems when you could own the companies causing them?" My mom said I was embarrassing myself chasing hippie causes. We started clashing back in high school. College just made the gap wider. While Nate had his tuition covered, His car paid for, his apartment in Boston lined with high-end furniture. I was working night shifts at a warehouse to make rent. I paid my own tuition, patched together scholarships, and learned early that if I wanted to eat, it was on me. I should have been bitter, and sometimes I was. But I also found something they couldn't touch: purpose. Every time I saw a creek blackened by runoff, or a kid coughing near a chemical plant, it reminded me why I chose this fight. Someone had to clean up the poison men like my father left behind. The only person who ever understood that was my grandma, Eleanor. She was different from the rest of them. Sharp, independent, with this quiet strength that made you believe she saw straight through all the family bullshit. She sat me down once when I was 19 and said, "You don't have to follow their path, Adam. You just have to make one they can't take away from you." I didn't know then what she really meant. Not until after she passed, 2 years later. When the will was read, I found out she left me something. Not jewelry, not a token, a trust fund, real money. I didn't even know the number until much later, but it was big. Big enough to change everything, and she'd tied it up tight. Airtight clauses that kept my parents from touching a dime. It was mine alone. But the catch? I couldn't touch it until I graduated or turned 25, whichever came last. That little detail lit a fire under me. Every exam, every paper, every grueling shift at work, I carried that thought. One day, I'll be free of them. My parents hated it. They never said the word jealous, but I saw it in their eyes. It wasn't about the money. They had more than enough. It was about control. My independence was a slap in the face. Every A I earned without their help, every step I took without their approval. It was proof they weren't gods. So, by the time I walked into that rooftop party with my degree in hand, I wasn't just the black sheep. I was the enemy. And they made sure I never forgot it. Being their enemy wasn't just about principle. It turned out it was about money, too. $9.5 million. That's what my grandmother left me. I didn't know the number until much later, but my parents did, long before I was supposed to. The trust had been written so tight, even my father's army of lawyers couldn't pry it open. The rules were simple. I had to be 25 or have a degree in hand, whichever came last. Until then, it just sat there, untouchable. The one loophole? If I died, it reverted back into the family estate, and that's when their smiles started to make sense. 3 months before I graduated, they found out. A lawyer slipped up in a boardroom fight. Some heated shouting match about shares, mergers, and liability, the kind of thing my dad lived for. In the middle of it, the guy mentioned my trust. He wasn't supposed to, but the words were out. My parents heard. And from that day on, everything shifted. The guilt trips, gone. The lectures about how I was throwing my life away on environmental engineering. Stopped cold. My mom, who used to sneer at my clothes, suddenly complimented my tie. My dad, who couldn't be bothered to shake my hand at Thanksgiving, started asking if I needed anything. I'd be lying if I said it didn't mess with me. When you grow up starved for approval, the first taste of it feels like oxygen. For a few weeks, I almost convinced myself maybe we'd turned a corner. Maybe graduation was a fresh start. But in my gut, I knew better. Because they didn't just stop fighting me. They overcorrected. They went sugar sweet. My mom texted me out of the blue. "We're so proud of you, Adam." My dad invited me to a lunch, just the two of us, at some overpriced steakhouse where he spent half the time staring at his phone. And then came the big one. They offered to throw me a graduation party. That had never happened before. Not for high school. Not when I won the regional science fair. Not when I got accepted into UIC. Nothing. I remember my dad saying, "It's time the world saw what you've accomplished." And my mom chimed in, "We want people to celebrate you, sweetheart. You deserve it." I nearly laughed in their faces. These two, celebrating me? No chance. But I didn't say no. Something told me I should play along, see where it went. Jesse noticed it too. One night at our usual bar, he leaned across the table and said, "Man, your folks are acting like pod people. You sure you're safe around them?" I shrugged. "They don't care enough to hurt me. They just want control." He raised an eyebrow. "You don't think they're plotting something?" I shook it off then. Plotting? They're image freaks, not mobsters. But I couldn't shake how forced it all felt. Every call, every compliment, every polite little gesture. It was like they were rehearsing kindness instead of living it. And once you've lived under their roof, you learn to recognize when something's staged. Still, poison never crossed my mind. The night of the party, when my dad handed me that glass, I thought maybe he was just trying to toast me in front of his friends. Maybe this was his way of pretending we were normal. But then I saw the drop, the vial, the quick wipe of his hand on the napkin. That's when the inheritance clicked into place. 9.5 million reasons to make sure I didn't cross that finish line. 9.5 million reasons to smile in my face while plotting behind my back. Looking back now, I feel stupid for not piecing it together sooner. But at the time, I was caught between two truths. They'd never loved me, and now they had a reason to want me gone. That was the new reality I walked into. And I wasn't about to roll over. I wasn't about to roll over. But that didn't mean I wasn't on edge the morning of graduation. They pulled up in the black Escalade like it was a wedding day. My mom leaned out the window with a smile stretched so tight I thought her face would crack. Inside, she fussed over my gown and collar, smoothing wrinkles that weren't there, plucking imaginary lint off my sleeve. "You'll thank me when the pictures come out," she said, like my whole degree boiled down to photo ops. My dad didn't even look at me when I climbed in. He scrolled his phone, mumbled, "We're running late," and that was it. Nate gave me one of his perfect handshake greetings. Firm grip, polished grin, quick pat on the shoulder like he was the proud big brother instead of the guy who'd never once helped me through a single class. I just nodded back. When I walked across that stage, Jesse and Mateo were the ones who actually made noise. They stood up, whistled, shouted my name while the rest of the room clapped politely. I couldn't stop grinning at them. They'd been there through the late-night cram sessions, the busted car battery, the nights I thought I'd never make it. They were my family, no blood required. After the ceremony, I rode with my parents and Nate to the venue. As soon as we stepped out, the difference hit me. This wasn't a family party. This was an event. White flowers lined the stairway, jazz music drifted from a live band, and servers in black vests carried trays of champagne like it was a wedding reception. Each menu had my name engraved in gold. But when I scanned the crowd, it wasn't my people. No classmates, no professors, just suits, media personalities, slick investors, old money faces sipping martinis, strangers. This wasn't for me. This was for them. Then I spotted someone I did know. Dr. Kirkman, my mentor from the Environmental Sciences Department. He was leaning on his cane, talking to two executives who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. When he saw me, his whole face lit up. "Adam!" he called, pulling me into a hug. "I'm proud of you. Damn proud!" I smiled, but before I could thank him, his tone shifted. His eyes cut sideways, and he lowered his voice. "Listen, be careful tonight. Something's brewing. I've been hearing things. FDA heat. Lawsuits piling up. Bramwell Labs is in trouble. Big trouble. Don't get caught in the blast." My stomach sank. "What do you mean?" "Whistleblowers. Data leaks. Toxic waste numbers that don't add up. I can't say more here, but trust me, someone's going down." He squeezed my shoulder. "Watch your back." I nodded, though my throat felt dry. The man had never once exaggerated. If he said the company was in deep, it was. I glanced around and saw my parents staring across the room. My mom pretended to sip her drink. My dad whispered to a waiter and pointed toward the bar. Both of them snapped their attention back to their guests the moment I looked. Jesse leaned close, his voice low. "Man, they're watching you like a hawk." Mateo crossed his arms. Not just watching, controlling. Look at them. Moving people, directing staff. This ain't about celebrating you, bro. It's about staging something. They weren't wrong. Everywhere I turned, there was another waiter adjusting trays, another pair of eyes flicking toward me, another shift in the seating arrangement. My dad never let things happen naturally. He orchestrated. But tonight, it wasn't business. It was me. I forced myself to play along, shake hands, accept congratulations from people who didn't even know my major. Every smile I gave felt like a mask tightening over my skin. Every clink of a champagne glass rang like a warning bell. Something was wrong. I could feel it building all night. And if Dr. Kirkman was right, this wasn't just a family issue anymore. It was bigger, dirtier, dangerous. But I didn't know how dangerous until later. The music had just shifted into something upbeat when I slipped down a narrow hallway toward the bathrooms. My pulse was already hammering, but what I heard next made my knees nearly buckle. Two voices. My parents. I froze, just outside the cracked door of a service corridor. "Are you sure about this?" my mom whispered, her voice shaking in a way I'd never heard. My dad's response was low and sharp. "He's a threat. If he blows the whistle about the waste site, we lose everything. It's not lethal, just enough to keep him out of the way until the trust reverts." My stomach lurched. Waste site. Trust. They weren't even hiding it. For a second, I pressed my hand against the wall just to steady myself. The air felt thin. I wanted to charge in there, scream, demand answers, but I knew that would get me nowhere. They had already decided. I wasn't a son. I was an obstacle. I backed away, forcing each step to stay silent, and slipped back into the glow of the rooftop lights. The party was still humming along, oblivious. Laughter, clinking glasses, the band swelling into another song. None of them knew there was poison in the room. That's when the waiters came out carrying trays of champagne flutes. But not just the regular stuff. This was a smaller batch, pulled from a silver ice bucket near the head table. My dad moved like a general checking his troops. He picked up a single flute, inspected it, then set it apart. His eyes flicked toward me. One of the waiters brought it straight over. My father lifted the glass and handed it to me himself, his face smooth as glass. "To my son," he said. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to smash it on the floor. Instead, I forced a smile, took the glass, nodded like nothing was wrong. "Thanks, Dad." I turned away slowly, careful not to let my hand shake, and scanned the room until my eyes landed on Nate. He was laughing with two investors. His perfect tie loosened, his charm turned all the way up. I walked right up, keeping my face calm, even though my heart felt like it was splitting open. "Nate," I said, lifting my glass. He grinned. "What's this? You actually letting me toast with you?" "Tonight's about family." I held his eyes for a second before holding out my glass. "Here, take this one. I'll grab yours." He didn't even question it, just laughed, swapped flutes, and clinked. "To family." I raised my new glass, but my gaze was locked on my father across the room. He was watching, and he knew exactly what I had done. Nate tilted his head back and drank. Every drop. The crowd cheered, glasses clinked all around us, and I smiled like I belonged in the moment. Inside, though, my stomach twisted so hard I thought I'd throw up right there. I caught Jesse's eye across the room. He was filming on his phone, his brow furrowed, like he sensed something was off. Mateo was standing rigid, arms folded, scanning the crowd the same way I was. My mom fluttered over with her pearls bouncing against her chest, beaming at Nate, not realizing what had just happened. My dad stayed still, jaw tight, fists hidden at his sides. And me? I kept drinking from Nate's harmless glass, slow and steady, my eyes never leaving the man who tried to bury me before I ever had a chance to live. I kept my smile plastered on, sipping from Nate's harmless champagne flute, while my father's eyes burned through me. He knew, I knew, and neither of us moved. 25 minutes later, the switch hit. At first, Nate just looked buzzed, swaying a little as he laughed with his friends. Then the color drained from his face. He wiped his forehead, muttering, "Damn, it's hot in here." He tried to steady himself on the table, but his hand slipped. His glass shattered on the floor. "Bro, you okay?" Jesse asked, already moving closer. Nate shook his head, his speech slurred. "Just dizzy. Must be." Then he stumbled forward, knocking into a waiter before crashing to the ground. The whole rooftop went dead silent for a second. Then chaos broke loose. "Oh my God!" my mom screamed, dropping her drink as she rushed toward him. Her heels clacked across the tile like gunshots. "Somebody help him!" Guests gasped and backed away. Phones shot up in the air to record. My father crouched by Nate, his jaw locked so tight it looked like stone. "Call an ambulance," he barked, trying to keep his voice calm, but I saw it, the panic flickering under his eyes. I didn't wait. I shoved through the crowd, crouched next to Nate, and snapped, "Get me space. He needs air." He was sweating buckets, eyes rolling, muscles twitching like they were trying to fire all at once. I knew the signs. My courses on toxicology came rushing back. Jesse was filming everything, steady hand, camera locked on the chaos. He captured the switch, me handing Nate the glass, the look on my dad's face when Nate drank. He knew exactly what he was catching. The EMTs pushed through 10 minutes later, bags clattering, defibrillator case banging against one of them. One of them checked Nate's pulse and looked at me. "What are we dealing with?" he demanded. I didn't hesitate. "I believe it's a synthetic anticholinergic. Experimental. My father's company works with compounds like it. He needs atropine, now." The EMT blinked, then shouted to his partner. They moved fast, hooking Nate up, shoving oxygen over his face. "Who are you?" the other EMT asked, staring at me like I wasn't just another panicked bystander. "Environmental engineering, specialized coursework in toxicology." My voice was steady, but my chest felt like it was splitting open. They hauled Nate onto a stretcher and rushed him out. My mom screamed his name like it was a lifeline. My dad stayed behind, face pale, hand clenched around his glass. He didn't chase the stretcher. He didn't even move. I ran after them, but security blocked me from climbing into the ambulance. So I called for a separate car, dialed my lawyer, and then the university safety officer who knew exactly what my father's labs had been skirting for years. My fingers shook against the phone, but I forced myself to sound calm. When I reached the hospital, I stormed straight through to the ER desk. "He came in 10 minutes ago. Young male, acute tox symptoms. I have details for the attending physician." The nurse blinked but waved me back when she heard the urgency in my voice. The doctor, mid-40s, sharp eyes, no nonsense, met me just outside Nate's room. "Who are you?" she demanded. "I'm his brother. Listen, it's anticholinergic, synthetic, fast-acting. He drank it less than 40 minutes ago. He'll need airway support, maybe atropine and P0ison depending on dose." Her eyebrows shot up. "And you know this how?" "My degree. My coursework isn't just for show. I know what it looks like." She didn't waste another second. She turned to her team. "Push atropine, monitor cardiac function, prepare for possible seizures." I watched through the glass as they worked. Tubes, wires, steady commands. My stomach churned with every beep of the monitor. Finally, after what felt like an hour but was probably 15 minutes, the doctor stepped back out. Her gloves were streaked with sweat marks. "He's stable," she said. But it was close. Another 30 minutes, and his heart could have given out. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. My hands still shook, but the weight in my chest eased just enough for me to stand upright. Nate was alive. For now. And I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Nate was stable, but I wasn't leaving the hospital. I planted myself in a hard plastic chair outside his room, waiting. My shirt was damp with sweat, my fists clenched so tight my nails left marks. That's when 2 CPD detectives walked in, badges out. "Adam Bramwell, the older one asked. Yeah. My voice came out rough. We need your statement. Start from the beginning. They pulled me into a side room with a formica table and buzzing fluorescent lights. I told them everything. The champagne, the vial, the hallway argument. I laid it out clean, no stuttering, no hesitation. Then I handed them Jesse's recording. He'd already uploaded it to the cloud and sent me a copy. The video caught the moment clear as day. My dad handing me the glass, me handing it to Nate, the look on my father's face when Nate drank. It wasn't the whole crime, but it was enough to paint the picture. And the motive? One detective asked, pen scratching across his notebook. The inheritance, $9.5 million from my grandmother, locked until I graduated or turned 25. The trust reverts to the family estate if I die. The younger detective raised his brows. So you're saying your father tried to kill you for money? Not saying, I'm telling you. I leaned forward. I overheard him. My mom asked if he was sure. He said, if he blows the whistle about the waste site, we lose everything. It's not lethal, just enough to keep him out of the way until the trust reverts. His words, not mine. The door burst open before they could respond. My father strode in with a lawyer at his side. Tailored suit, tie still perfect, like he hadn't just watched his own son collapse. This is ridiculous, he snapped. My son is unstable. He's been resentful his whole life. He poisoned his brother and now he's spinning stories to cover himself. I shot to my feet. You think anyone's buying that? You handed me the damn glass. The lawyer held up a hand. Mr. Bramwell, sit down. Let me handle this. My father sneered. He's always been paranoid. He failed at everything we gave him and now he's lashing out. Ask anyone who knows him. Enough, the older detective barked. We'll hear both sides. But the toxicology results came back within the hour. The compound in Nate's blood wasn't some mystery drug. It matched a prototype filed under restricted testing at Bramwell Labs. One not even approved for human trials. The detective dropped the report on the table. Your company's signature compound. Hard to spin that. For the first time, my father's jaw twitched. Just for a second, but I caught it. Then the dominoes started falling. Emails surfaced from the lab's internal system, pulled by federal investigators who'd already been circling the company for months. Turns out the FBI had an open case on Bramwell Labs for environmental crimes, falsified data, illegal dumping, bribery. My dad had been under quiet surveillance, and now his arrogance had handed them proof on a silver platter. One email sealed it. Leonard Bramwell had signed out the very vial 3 days before my graduation, logged under his clearance. When the detectives showed him the timestamp, he stopped talking. His lawyer started stalling, demanding warrants, insisting it was standard procedure. But it was already over. The younger detective leaned back, shaking his head. Guess your golden boy just became Exhibit A. Because Nate, the heir, the face of the family, wasn't just a victim. He was living proof of what Bramwell Labs had been hiding, and the lengths they'd go to protect it. Uniformed officers walked in a few minutes later. My mom trailed behind them, mascara smeared, still clinging to her pearls like they could protect her. They cuffed them both. My dad tried to keep his composure, straightening his shoulders like it was just another negotiation. My mom sobbed, begging them to think of the family name. I watched them hauled down that sterile hallway, two figures who had once towered over my whole life, reduced to suspects in chains. For the first time, I felt taller than both of them. For the first time, I felt taller than both of them. But when I turned back toward Nate's room, reality hit. He was still pale, tubes running into his arms, machines tracking every beat of his heart. I sat at his bedside for hours, not sure what to say. When his eyes finally cracked open, the first thing out of his mouth wasn't thanks. It was, "What the hell did you do to me?" His voice was raw, but the anger in it was sharp enough to cut. "I didn't do anything," I said. "You drank what Dad handed me." He tried to sit up, wincing. "Don't bullshit me. You set me up. You wanted me out of the picture." I leaned forward, my fists pressing into my knees. You think I'd risk your life just to make a point? He poisoned me. I switched glasses. That's it. If I wanted you gone, I'd have let him keep the target where it was. His eyes narrowed, but then I saw it. The flicker of memory. The image of our father raising that glass. Nate fell quiet, chewing on the thought. Finally, he muttered, I saw him hand it to you. Exactly, I snapped. So stop acting like this is about me. Silence stretched between us, filled only by the beeping of the monitors. Then he exhaled, slow and shaky. I should have known. I didn't respond. I let him sit with it. A few hours later, when the doctor cleared his head enough, Nate started talking again. But this time it wasn't accusations. I saw something, he said, staring at the ceiling. About 3 weeks ago, reports, testing data. I was reviewing quarterly updates for West Ridge, and there it was. Chemical discharge levels that didn't match the environmental reports. Not even close. At first I thought it was a typo, but the more I looked, the worse it got. I froze. You're saying they've been dumping? Mass dumping, he said. Hazardous waste, levels that should have triggered shutdowns, alerts, fines. Instead, the numbers in the official filings were scrubbed, edited. Someone at corporate signed off. I shook my head. Of course. They've been hiding this for years. He turned toward me then, his eyes dark. I ignored it. I told myself it was nothing, or that Dad had it handled. I didn't want to know the truth. But now, after what happened, after what? I can't pretend anymore. The words hit harder than I expected. My brother, the golden boy, admitting he'd been complicit. For a moment, I almost pitied him. He'd spent his life as their puppet, groomed to inherit not just the wealth, but the rot underneath it. So what are you going to do? I asked. His jaw tightened. I'll testify. I blinked. You'd turn on them? They tried to kill you, he said flatly, and they almost killed me instead. If I stay quiet, I'm no better than them. I leaned back in my chair, letting that sink in. I'd never expected Nate to be on my side. We weren't close growing up. He was the golden child. I was the disappointment. But now the lines were redrawn. Blood wasn't thicker than truth. Then we wreck the illusion, I said. He nodded, slow but certain. Together. For the first time in years, I felt like we weren't brothers at war. We were soldiers facing the same enemy, and that enemy just happened to share our last name. And soon, the world saw them for what they really were. Our parents were denied bail within 48 hours. The judge didn't even hesitate. With attempted murder stacked on top of environmental crimes and corporate fraud, there was no way they were walking free. Reporters swarmed the courthouse steps every morning, cameras flashing, microphones shoved in the faces of lawyers who couldn't spin fast enough. The backlash was brutal. News anchors called it the fall of a pharmaceutical dynasty. Protesters camped outside Bramwell Labs headquarters with signs that read, "Poison kings and blood money doesn't heal." Every detail spilled into the press. The inheritance, the poison, the waste site cover-ups. I didn't hide. I stepped right into the storm. I took the inheritance Grandma left me and built something they couldn't corrupt. The Bramwell Environmental Fund. Every cent was pointed at the communities their labs had poisoned. West Ridge, South Haven. Small towns nobody cared about until kids started showing up with rashes and asthma. The first time I stood in front of a group of families in West Ridge, I thought my throat would close. But when I said, "This money should have gone to the next yacht or vacation house. Instead, it's yours, to fix what they broke," people stood and clapped. Some cried. For the first time in my life, I felt like a Bramwell name wasn't poison itself. Nate made his choice too. He stepped down from every board seat, walked away from the company he'd been bred to run. At first he drifted, unsure of where to land, but eventually he found his place volunteering at legal clinics. He helped whistleblowers fight companies that tried to silence them, the same way our parents had done for decades. We didn't forgive them, not even close. Forgiveness wasn't on the table, but we stopped carrying the shame they'd dumped on us since we were kids. Their lies weren't ours anymore. A year later, I stood at a podium in a Chicago conference hall, staring out at rows of engineers, scientists, community leaders. My hands gripped the sides of the lectern, but for once it wasn't nerves. It was focus. I presented the project I designed, a low-cost filtration system for rural water supplies. Simple design, scalable, built to stop the same kind of chemical seepage Bramwell Labs had tried to bury. I walked them through the specs, the trials, the results. And when I finished, the room stood and clapped. Not polite applause, real, thunderous approval that rattled the air. I scanned the crowd and spotted him, Nate, in the back row, suit jacket off, sleeves rolled up. He wasn't the polished air anymore. He looked like a man who had chosen his own life. And when our eyes met, he nodded. Just once. But it said everything. For years we'd been divided, golden boy and black sheep, favorite and failure. But now, we were on the same side, tearing down the empire that had almost destroyed us both. The conference applause was still ringing in my ears when the last chapter finally came. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, protesters, even a few ex-employees of Bramwell Labs sitting in the gallery. The air was heavy, like everyone was waiting to hear the empire's coffin nailed shut. Our parents sat at the defense table, wrists bare, no jewelry, no power suits, just plain clothes and blank stares. They didn't look like titans anymore. They looked like what they were, criminals. The judge read the plea deal flatly. 22 years each, no parole. The sound of the gavel cracked across the room like thunder. My father stood, chin high, and gave his little speech. Everything I did to protect the family. Sometimes sacrifices must be made. History will vindicate me. His voice carried, smug as ever, like the words might erase the cuffs on his wrists. My mother broke next to him. She sobbed so hard her shoulders shook, tears streaking her makeup, but neither of them looked at us. Not once. When the hearing adjourned, the reporters swarmed. Cameras flashed. Microphones jabbed at my face. One reporter shouted over the chaos, "Adam, do you regret letting Nate drink the champagne?" I stared straight at the cameras. The only thing I regret is being born into a family that valued reputation over life. The shouting grew louder, more questions flying, but then Nate stepped forward. He grabbed a mic from one of the reporters, his voice carrying clear. "My brother saved my life. Our parents tried to poison him because he stood for something. I was blind for too long. Not anymore." The crowd erupted, cameras flashing so bright it looked like lightning. For the first time I saw my brother not as the golden boy, not as the heir, but as someone who finally chose his own side. We pushed through the crowd together, shoulder to shoulder, down those courthouse steps. Flashbulbs popped, people shouted our names, but none of it mattered. It wasn't justice in some fairy tale sense. Our parents weren't going to rot in some storybook dungeon. They were just two old liars locked in cells. But it was enough. We weren't pawns anymore, and we weren't going to let the cycle repeat. Would you have switched the glasses like I did, or handled it differently? Tell me in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories.
YouTube picked this for you. Tap it. Let's see if they guessed right.